The warning signals came through space like screams in the dark. Every communication station in the galaxy picked up the same desperate message, broadcast on all emergency frequencies at once. The voice belonged to a Villani, one of the peaceful traitor species that lived on the outer edges of civilized space. This is Colony Administrator Thelen of Villani Prime. Unknown hostiles are attacking our worlds. Our defenses cannot hold them back. They are taking our people. They are destroying everything. Please, anyone who can hear this message, we need help. We need help now. Our children are dying. The message repeated over and over, getting weaker each time it played. Then it stopped completely. Captain Jinho was drinking his morning coffee aboard the Earth Defense Force station when the alert came through. He had been looking forward to a quiet day of routine patrols and paperwork. The emergency klaxon changed all of that in seconds. "Captain, to the communications center immediately," the voice said over the ship's speakers. "Priority Alpha message from Galactic Council Command." Jinho put down his coffee and ran. Priority Alpha meant someone was dying and they needed help fast. He had never heard one before in his 15 years of service, but every officer knew what it meant. The communications center was buzzing with activity when he arrived. Lieutenant Taewon looked up from his console with worried eyes. "Sir, we're getting multiple distress calls from the Villani colonies. The signals are coming from at least 6 different worlds. They're all saying the same thing. Something is attacking them, and they can't fight back." Jinho leaned over the console and listened to the recordings. The Villani voices were filled with terror, but they tried to stay calm as they described the attacks. Ships appearing from nowhere. Weapons that cut through their peaceful defenses like paper. People being taken alive. "What do we know about the attackers?" Jinho asked. "Nothing, sir. The Villani descriptions don't match any known species or technology in our databases. The energy signatures are completely new. Whatever is attacking them, we've never seen it before." On Earth, the news reached Admiral Sunmi within minutes of the first transmission. She was in her office at Pacific Command, reviewing fleet deployments for the next quarter. The holographic display in front of her showed the positions of every human warship in known space. It was an impressive sight, but still small compared to the vast fleets of older galactic civilizations. Her aide, Commander Hannah, burst through the door without knocking. That alone told Sunmi how serious the situation was. "Admiral, emergency communication from the Galactic Council. The Villani colonies are under attack. They're requesting immediate military assistance." Sunmi pulled up the tactical display of Villani space. The colonies were 3 weeks away at maximum faster-than-light speed. That was assuming everything went perfectly and they pushed their engines to the breaking point. "What about the other council species? Can anyone get there faster?" "No, ma'am. The Altarian fleet is on the other side of the galaxy dealing with some border dispute. The Centauri are too far away and their ships are slower than ours anyway. The Council's own peacekeeping forces are scattered across dozens of worlds on diplomatic missions. We're the only ones who can respond in time." Sunmi studied the display for a long moment. The Villani were good people. They had never hurt anyone, never started a war, never even raised their voices in council debates. They made beautiful art and traded fairly with everyone they met. The idea of someone attacking them made her angry. "Send a message to Captain Jinho's battle group. Tell them to begin immediate preparations for emergency deployment. I want them ready to jump to FTL in 6 hours." "Yes, ma'am." "Should I inform the council that we're responding?" "Do it. And Hannah, tell them we're sending our best." The message reached the Galactic Council chambers on New Geneva within the hour. Ambassador Kyung read the formal response to the assembled representatives of 47 different species. The Great Hall was filled with worried murmurs as she spoke. "Earth accepts the request for military assistance to the Villani colonies. We are deploying Battle Group 7 under Captain Jinho's command. Estimated arrival time is 21 standard days." The Thurian representative, a tall being with silver skin and multiple eyes, stood up from his seat. Ambassador Kyung, with respect, can a single human battle group handle a threat that has overwhelmed 6 Villani worlds? Before Kyung could answer, the Altarian delegate interrupted. The humans are from what they call a deathworld, are they not? We have heard stories about their aggressive nature, but stories are not the same as proven military capability. Kyung smiled politely, but her eyes were hard. She had heard these comments before. Many of the older civilizations looked down on humanity as newcomers to the galactic community. They saw humans as primitive and violent, barely evolved from their warlike past. Honored delegates, Earth's military has kept the peace in our sector for over 50 years. Our ships and personnel are well trained and equipped for this type of mission. Captain Jinho's battle group includes some of our most experienced officers and Marines. The Centauri representative, a being that looked like a walking crystal formation, clicked its communication crystals together. But have they ever fought an unknown enemy? Have they ever faced a threat that could destroy entire colonies? No, Kyung admitted. But then again, neither has anyone else in this chamber. The Villani are dying while we debate. My people are willing to risk their lives to save them. Are you? The chamber fell silent. Several delegates looked uncomfortable. The truth was that most galactic civilizations had not fought a real war in centuries. They had peacekeeping forces and patrol ships, but nothing designed for serious combat. Their societies had evolved beyond the need for large military forces. Humanity was different. Earth was what the galaxy politely called a high-gravity, high-danger world. Most species could not even visit Earth's surface without protective equipment. The gravity would crush them, the weather would kill them, and the native life forms would eat them. Humans had evolved in that hostile environment. They were stronger, faster, and more adaptable than most galactic species. More importantly, they had never completely given up their warrior instincts. Even in the age of space travel and galactic civilization, humans still trained for war. The Villani delegate, one of the few survivors who had escaped the attacks, spoke up from her seat near the back of the chamber. Her normally beautiful crystal skin was cracked and dim with grief. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My people are dying. We have never asked for military help before because we never needed it. We do not know how to fight. We do not have weapons or soldiers. All we have is hope that someone will help us." She looked directly at Ambassador Kyung. "If your people are willing to risk their lives for ours, we will be forever grateful. We do not care if they are young or old, experienced or new. We only care that they are coming." Kyung nodded respectfully to the Villani delegate. "Captain Jinho and his people will not let you down. Earth keeps its promises." As the session ended, and the delegates filed out, many of them whispered among themselves. Some wondered if the humans were really as dangerous as the rumors suggested. Others worried that a single battle group would not be enough against whatever had destroyed the Villani defenses so easily. A few of the older delegates remembered the stories their predecessors had told about humanity's first contact with the galactic community, how human negotiators had been polite and diplomatic, but their military escorts had moved with a predatory grace that made everyone nervous. How human ships looked different from everyone else's, bristling with weapons and armor instead of the elegant curves preferred by more civilized species. The galaxy was about to find out if those stories were true. The Villani were counting on it. In 3 weeks, Captain Jinho and his Killworlders would arrive at the edge of known space, ready to face an enemy that no one understood. The question was whether humanity's reputation for violence would be enough to save an entire civilization from extinction. Captain Jinho stood on the bridge of the EDF Thunderbolt, watching his battle group prepare for the fastest deployment in Earth Defense Force history. Through the viewports he could see the other ships of Battle Group 7 taking their positions. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 2 assault ships loaded with Marines. It was not the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, but it was one of the most dangerous. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received orders to deploy to the Villani colonies on an emergency rescue mission. Unknown hostiles have attacked peaceful civilian populations. We are the only force close enough to help them. I know this mission will be dangerous, but these people are counting on us." We will not let them down. Lieutenant Commander Hannah looked up from her tactical station. Sir, all ships report ready for jump to faster than light speed. Engineering says we can maintain maximum velocity for the entire journey, but it will push our engines to their limits. Do it, Jinho ordered. Every hour we delay means more Villani civilians die. The journey to Villani space would take 21 days at maximum speed. That gave them 3 weeks to prepare for whatever they would find when they arrived. Jinho had fought pirates and smugglers before, but never an unknown enemy with the power to destroy entire colonies. On the assault ship Fortress, Colonel Minho was briefing his Marines. The 47th Marine Expeditionary Unit was one of Earth's elite fighting forces. They had trained for every kind of combat situation imaginable, from boarding actions in space to jungle warfare on hostile planets. Listen up, people, Minho said to the assembled Marines. We're going to help a species that has never fought a war in their entire history. The Villani are peaceful traders and artists. They don't have armies or weapons. When someone attacks them, they can't fight back. Staff Sergeant Doyan raised his hand. Sir, what do we know about the enemy? Not much, Minho admitted. The distress calls mentioned unknown ships and weapons that cut through Villani defenses. Easily, the energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. We're going in blind. Sergeant Jiho frowned. So we don't know how many of them there are, what their weapons can do, or even what they look like. That's right. But we do know they're attacking innocent civilians. That makes them the enemy, no matter what they are. The Marines nodded grimly. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be a one-way trip. That was what separated human soldiers from the peacekeeping forces of other species. Humans were willing to die for strangers. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Soman was studying everything the databases contained about Villani physiology. The aliens were tall and graceful, with skin that looked like living crystal. They communicated partly through speech and partly through patterns of light that moved across their bodies. They're beautiful, she murmured to herself, looking at the images on her screen, like living works of art. The medical files showed that Villani were physically fragile compared to humans. Their bones were hollow like bird bones, and their skin could crack under stress. They had evolved on a peaceful world with low gravity and no large predators. Dr. Soman made notes about how to treat Villani injuries. She hoped she would not need the information, but experience had taught her to prepare for the worst. Major Yuna, the unit's intelligence officer, was working with a different kind of preparation. She had spent years studying alien cultures and military tactics. Her job was to understand enemies and predict what they might do. The problem is that we have no baseline for comparison, she explained to Captain Jinho during their daily briefing. Every species we've encountered before has some kind of historical record. We know how they think, how they fight, what motivates them. With this enemy, we're starting from zero. What about the attack patterns? Jinho asked. Can you learn anything from how they hit the Villani colonies? Yuna pulled up a holographic map showing the location of the attacks. They hit 6 worlds simultaneously, which suggests either a very large force or some kind of advanced technology that lets them be in multiple places at once. They targeted population centers first, not military installations. That could mean they want prisoners, or it could mean they just don't see the Villani as a military threat. Probably the second one, Shino said grimly. The Villani don't have a military to threaten anyone with. As the days passed, the human fleet pushed deeper into space. The ships ran their engines at maximum power, racing against time. Every member of the crew knew that each day of travel meant another day of suffering for the Villani colonies. Lieutenant Taiwan spent his off-duty hours in the ship's gym, practicing hand-to-hand combat with other officers. Like many humans, he found that physical training helped him think more clearly about tactical problems. What if the enemy adapts to our tactics? He asked his sparring partner during a break. Most species fight in predictable patterns. Humans are different because we're willing to try crazy things that don't make logical sense. Then we'll have to be even crazier, his partner replied with a grin. That attitude was typical of human military thinking, where other species relied on overwhelming firepower or defensive formations. Humans preferred speed, adaptability, and surprise. They had learned to fight on a world where the environment itself was trying to kill them. That experience had taught them to be creative in combat. Chief Engineer Borum was having her own concerns about the mission. The ship's engines were running at their maximum safe output, and she was not sure they could maintain that pace for the entire journey. "We're pushing everything to the limit," she reported to Captain Jinho. "The fusion reactors are running hot. The FTL drive is cycling faster than recommended, and the cooling systems are working overtime. We can probably make it to Villani space, but I can't guarantee we'll be in fighting condition when we arrive." "Do whatever you need to do," Jinho told her. "If we show up a day late because our engines failed, it won't matter how good our fighting condition is." Navigator Yunwu was plotting their course through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. The route to Villani colonies took them through regions where stellar phenomena could tear apart unwary ships. There were gravity wells, radiation storms, and areas where space itself seemed to bend in unnatural ways. "I can get us there faster if we take the direct route through the Nexus storm," he reported. "But if the storm is active, it could destroy the fleet. What are the odds?" 50-50, sir. "Maybe better if we're lucky." Jinho considered the options. The safe route would add 3 days to their journey. 3 more days of Villani civilians dying while they traveled through empty space. Take the direct route, he decided. If we don't make it, at least we tried. The decision to risk the Nexus storm was typical of human military thinking. Other species would have chosen the safe route and arrived too late to help. Humans were willing to gamble everything on a dangerous chance dot as the fleet approached the storm. The ship's sensors detected massive energy discharges and gravitational anomalies that could crush a vessel in seconds. The crew watched nervously as streaks of multicolored lightning flashed past their viewports. "All ships maintain formation," Junho ordered over the fleet communication system. "Stay close and follow my lead. We're going to punch through this thing and come out the other side ready to fight." The fleet plunged into the storm like a spear thrust into an enemy's heart. For 6 hours, the ships fought their way through. Forces that could have powered entire civilizations. Hulls groaned under gravitational stress, and emergency systems worked overtime to keep the crews alive. When they finally emerged on the other side, every ship was damaged but still functional. More importantly, they had cut 3 days off their travel time. They were now only 12 days away from Villani space. Captain Jinho looked at his tired but determined crew and felt proud. This was what humans did best. They took impossible risks, and somehow made them work. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's children were called Killworlders. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Villani system, and Captain Jinho immediately knew they were looking at something terrible. His bridge crew stared in shocked silence at the main view screen, trying to process what they were seeing, where the beautiful crystal cities of Villani Prime should have been gleaming in the light of their golden sun. There were only burning ruins. Massive ships hung in orbit around the planet like metal vultures, their dark hulls covered in strange growths that pulsed with sickly light. The ships were enormous, each one easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel. "Dear God," whispered Navigator Hyunwoo, "what are those things?" Lieutenant Commander Hana was already working at her tactical station, trying to make sense of the sensor readings. "Sir, I'm detecting at least 12 large vessels in orbit around Villani Prime. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be using some kind of biomechanical technology." "Biomechanical?" Jinho asked. "Yes, sir. Parts of those ships are alive. They're growing and changing even as we watch them. On the planet's surface, the sensors showed movement. Not the gentle, organized patterns of Villani city life, but chaotic swarms of smaller objects moving across the landscape like insects." "Captain," called Communications Officer Borum, "I'm picking up faint transmission from the surface. Someone is trying to broadcast on emergency frequencies." Put it through. The voice that came over the speakers was weak and filled with pain. But it was definitely Villani. This is Elder Kesson of the 3rd District. Any ships receiving this message, please help us. The harvesters have taken most of our people. We are hiding in the old mining tunnels, but they are finding us, our children. Please, if anyone can hear this. The transmission cut off abruptly. Jinho felt anger burning in his chest. These creatures, whatever they were, had attacked peaceful civilians. They had murdered families and destroyed a civilization that had never hurt anyone. All ships, battle stations, he ordered, were going in. Sir, Hana said urgently, those ships outweigh us by at least 50 to 1. Our weapons might not even penetrate their hulls. Then we'll have to get creative, Jinho replied. Send. A message to Colonel Minho. Tell him to prepare his Marines for immediate combat deployment. We're going to hit them hard and fast before they know we're here. The alien ships seemed to notice the human fleet at that moment. Several of the massive vessels began turning toward them, moving with surprising grace for something so large. As they turned, the humans could see that the ships were not just biomechanical, but actively harvesting materials from the planet below. Long tentacle-like structures extended from the ships down to the surface, drawing up streams of matter that disappeared into their hulls. They're eating the planet, Dr. Soman said over the communication channel from the medical bay. Those aren't just weapons, they're feeding. Major Yuna's voice came through from the intelligence center. Captain, based on the attack patterns we're seeing, I believe these entities consume entire civilizations. They take everything, people, resources, technology. That's why we've never seen them before. They don't leave survivors to warn others. Jinho absorbed this information quickly. If these harvesters consumed entire civilizations, then this was not just a rescue mission anymore. This was a fight for the survival of every species in the galaxy. All ships implement attack pattern Delta, he commanded. We're going to hit them from multiple directions at once. Don't give them time to coordinate their defenses. The human fleet spread out and began their attack. The 3 heavy cruisers, Thunderbolt, Valiant, and Defender, approached from different angles while the 6 destroyers moved in fast attack formations. The 2 assault ships, Fortress and Spearhead, prepared to launch their Marines as soon as they could get close enough to the planet. The first human weapons struck the harvester ships with brilliant flashes of light. Plasma cannons and missile salvos slammed into the alien hulls, but the damage was less than the humans had hoped. The biomechanical armor seemed to absorb some of the energy and redirect it elsewhere, but the harvesters were not prepared for the speed and coordination of the human attack. Most galactic species fought with large, heavily armed ships that moved slowly and relied on overwhelming firepower. The humans used smaller, faster vessels that could change direction quickly and attack from unexpected angles. Direct hit on the lead vessel, reported Weapons Officer Taiwan from the Thunderbolt. Their armor is damaged, but they're still functional. The harvesters began to respond, and the humans learned why they had been so successful against other species. The alien weapons fired beams of intense energy that could cut through most known materials like paper. When they hit the destroyer Courageous, the ship's shields collapsed and her hull began to melt. Courageous is taking heavy damage, came the report over the fleet communication system. We're losing life support on decks 3 through 7. But Captain Jingho had expected casualties. Human military doctrine was built around the idea that some ships and crews would be lost in any major battle. A key was to make sure their sacrifice accomplished something important. All ships concentrate fire on the harvester vessels that are actively feeding, he ordered. If we can disrupt their feeding process, it might force them to break off their attack on the planet. The human fleet focused their weapons on the tentacle-like structures that connected the harvester ships to the planet's surface. When the concentrated firepower severed one of the connections, the alien ship let out a sound that the humans could feel through their hulls even in the vacuum of space. It was a sound of pain and rage. That got their attention, Hana observed as several harvester Ships began moving toward the human fleet with obvious hostile intent. On the surface of Villani Prime, Colonel Minho and his Marines were having their own fight. The assault ships had managed to land near the coordinates of Elder Kessen's transmission, but the area was swarming with smaller harvester units. The ground-based harvesters were even more disturbing than their space-based cousins. They looked like a nightmare combination of machine and living creature, with metal limbs that ended in organic sensors and weapons that seemed to grow from their bodies. Staff Sergeant Doyan led his squad through the ruins of what had been a Villani residential district. The beautiful crystal buildings were shattered and covered in the same pulsing organic growths they had seen on the ships. "Movement ahead," reported Corporal Inha, who was serving as the squad's forward scout. "Looks like 3 of those spider things heading toward the mining tunnel entrance." The harvester ground units moved on multiple legs like giant spiders, but their bodies were a mix of metal and flesh that defied easy description. They seemed to be searching for something, probably the surviving Villani hiding in the tunnels. "Take them down," Doyan ordered. "Quiet as possible. We don't want to alert the whole swarm." The Marines opened fire with their pulse rifles, weapons designed specifically for fighting in environments where human enemies might be wearing advanced armor. The high-energy projectiles struck the harvester units and tore through their biomechanical shells, but as the creatures died, they released clouds of spores that began seeking out new hosts. One of the Marines, Private Kyung, screamed as the spores tried to burrow into his armor. "Chemical attack!" Doyan shouted. "Seal your suits and activate emergency filters." This was something the humans had not expected. The harvesters were not just consuming civilizations, they were converting them. The spores were trying to turn the Marines into more harvester units, but human equipment was designed for fighting on a world where everything was trying to kill them. The Marines' armor held, and their filters scrubbed the hostile spores from the air around them. In the tunnels below, Elder Kessen and the other Villani survivors heard the sound of weapons fire above them. For the first time in days, they felt something that might have been hope. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Captain Jinho realized they were losing. The human fleet had inflicted serious damage on several harvester ships, but the aliens were learning from every attack. Each time the humans tried a new tactic. The harvesters adapted their defenses within minutes. "Sir, the enemy is modifying their armor plating in real time," reported Lieutenant Commander Hana from her tactical station. "Our plasma cannons were effective in the first wave, but now their hulls are reflecting 90% of the energy back at us." The destroyer Vigilant had already been forced to retreat after taking reflected fire from its own weapons. The ship's captain reported that his hull was melting from energy that should have damaged the enemy, not his own vessel. "They're learning too fast," Jinho muttered, watching as another salvo of human missiles was intercepted by new defensive systems that had not existed an hour earlier. "Every attack we make teaches them how to defend against the next one." On the planet's surface, Colonel Minho was having the same problem. His Marines had successfully rescued Elder Kessen and 43 other Villani survivors from the mining tunnels, but the harvester ground units were becoming harder to kill with each engagement. "The spider things are growing thicker armor," Staff Sergeant Doyan reported over the radio. "My squad put 30 rounds into one of them, and it just shrugged them off and kept coming." Sergeant Jiho's voice crackled through the communication system. "It's worse than that, Sarge. I think they're learning to mimic our tactics. The one we fought 10 minutes ago was using cover and flanking maneuvers like it had been to Marine boot camp." Dr. Soman, who had been analyzing samples of harvester biotechnology, made a disturbing discovery. She called Captain Jinho from the medical bay with urgent news. "Captain, these things are not just adapting to our attacks. They're incorporating everything they encounter into their own systems. I found traces of Villani DNA in the harvester samples, but also genetic material from at least 6 other species I don't recognize." "What does that mean?" Jinho asked. "It means they've done this before, many times. Every civilization they consume makes them stronger and more adaptable. They're using the accumulated knowledge and biology of dozens of conquered species. Major Yuna had reached the same conclusion from her analysis of the tactical situation. Sir, based on their adaptation patterns, I estimate they've consumed at least 20 different civilizations. Each one taught them new ways to fight and defend themselves. The implications were terrifying. The humans were not just fighting one enemy, but the combined military knowledge of 20 conquered civilizations. Every species that had ever fought the Harvesters had unknowingly taught them how to defeat the next victims. Lieutenant Taiwan, who had been studying the enemy's response patterns, had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Captain, what if their ability to adapt is also their weakness? Explain. They learn from everything they encounter, right? They analyze our tactics and develop countermeasures. But what if we did something that couldn't be analyzed? Something so random and illogical that their adaptation systems couldn't process it? Jingho considered this. Human military thinking had always emphasized flexibility and creativity over rigid doctrine. It was one of the things that separated humans from most other species. What did you have in mind? We stopped trying to fight them the way they expect to be fought. Instead of coordinated tactics and logical strategies, we do everything wrong. We make decisions that don't make sense, use weapons in ways they weren't designed for, and attack targets that have no strategic value. It was a desperate plan, but Jinho was desperate. The conventional battle was not going well. 3 of his destroyers were heavily damaged, and the Harvester ships showed no signs of weakening. All ships, this is the captain. We're implementing a new tactical doctrine immediately. From now on, ignore all standard combat procedures. I want every ship to act independently. Attack whatever targets look interesting. Use your weapons in any way that might work, even if it goes against regulations. The fleet commanders acknowledged the orders with varying degrees of confusion and enthusiasm. Captain Sunmi, who had taken command of the destroyer squadron after her flagship was damaged, was the first to try the new approach. Instead of targeting the Harvester ship's weapons or engines, she ordered her crew to fire all weapons at a completely random section of hull that had no apparent strategic importance. The concentrated firepower blew a massive hole in the alien vessel, and the ship began venting atmosphere and fluids. How did that work? Asked her weapons officer. I have no idea, Sunmi replied, but it did work. Target another random section and fire again. On the ground, Colonel Minho received similar orders to abandon standard military doctrine. He gathered his squad leaders for a quick briefing in the ruins of a Villani library. New rules, people. Forget everything you learned in training about proper tactics and coordinated assaults. From now on, we fight like crazy people. Do whatever comes into your head first, even if it seems stupid. Staff Sergeant Doyan looked skeptical. Sir, with respect, that sounds like a good way to get everyone killed. Maybe, but fighting like smart soldiers is definitely getting us killed. These things adapt to smart tactics. Let's see how they handle complete insanity. The results were immediate and dramatic. When Sergeant Jiho's squad attacked a group of Harvester units by throwing their weapons at them and then charging with combat knives, the aliens were completely unprepared. Their adaptation systems had no framework for processing such irrational behavior. Corporal Inha discovered that Harvester ground units could be confused by loud noises and bright lights. She began using her demolition charges not as weapons, but as distractions, setting them off in random locations to keep the enemy off balance. Dr. Soman, monitoring the battle from the medical bay, watched in amazement as the human forces began winning through sheer unpredictability. They're having trouble adapting to chaos, she reported to Captain Jinho. Their systems are designed to analyze patterns and develop countermeasures, but random, illogical actions don't have patterns to analyze. The tide of battle began to turn. Harvester ships that had been winning easily against coordinated human attacks found themselves unable to cope with random, seemingly suicidal charges by individual vessels. Their adaptation systems overloaded trying to process tactical decisions that made no logical sense. Navigator Hyunwoo, inspired by the new doctrine, flew his damaged destroyer directly at a harvester ship and then veered off at the last second, firing all weapons at point-blank range. The alien vessel, which had been preparing for a ramming attack, was caught completely off guard by the sudden course change. "Their defensive systems are failing," reported Chief Engineer Borum from the engine room. "I think they're overloading, trying to adapt to too many different attack patterns at once. But the humans paid a price for their chaotic tactics." The destroyer Relentless was lost when her captain decided to ram a harvester ship head-on. The collision destroyed both vessels, but it also created a massive explosion that damaged 3 other enemy ships. Elder Kessin, who had been rescued from the tunnels, watched the battle from the safety of the human assault ship. The elderly Villani had never seen combat before, and he was amazed by what he witnessed. "Your people fight like they are not afraid to die," he said to Colonel Minho. "We're terrified," Minho replied honestly. "But we're more afraid of letting innocent people get hurt. Fear makes us dangerous, not weak." As the battle continued, more harvester ships arrived in the system. Long-range sensors detected at least 20 additional vessels approaching at high speed. Among them was something that made Captain Jinho's blood run cold. A ship so massive it was visible to the naked eye even at extreme range. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Commander Hana, "that thing is bigger than a space station. It's the size of a small moon." The hive ship had arrived, and with it came the real test of whether human unpredictability could overcome an enemy that had consumed entire civilizations. The massive hive ship blocked out the stars as it approached Villani Prime. Captain Jinho had seen large vessels before, but nothing like this. The alien ship was easily 50 kilometers long and covered in the same pulsing biomechanical growths as the smaller vessels. Thousands of smaller craft swarmed around it like angry insects. "Sir, I'm reading energy levels that are off the charts," reported Lieutenant Commander Hana. "That thing has enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet with a single volley." "Then we better make sure it doesn't get the chance," Jinho replied grimly. He opened a channel to all human ships. "All vessels, this is the captain. We're looking at something that could end this fight in seconds if we let it. I'm ordering Operation Wildcard." You all know what that means. Operation Wildcard was the most desperate tactic in human military doctrine. It meant abandoning all hope of survival and focusing only on causing maximum damage to the enemy. Every ship would fight until it was destroyed, using any means necessary to hurt the enemy. Chief Engineer Borum's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, if we overload our reactor while inside that hive ship, the explosion should be big enough to cripple it." "You're talking about a suicide run," Jinho said. "Yes, sir. But if that thing gets into the populated sectors of the galaxy, millions of people will die. Maybe billions." Jinho looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Navigator Yunwu was pale but determined. Lieutenant Taiwan was checking his weapon systems one last time. They all knew what Operation Wildcard meant, and they were all ready to die if necessary. "Set course for the hive ship's center section," Jinho ordered. "All power to forward shields and engines, we're going in." The other ships of the human fleet began their own suicide runs. Captain Sunmi led her destroyers in a coordinated attack on the hive ship's weapon clusters, hoping to disable some of its defenses before the Thunderbolt reached its target. The heavy cruisers Valiant and Defender focused their fire on the smaller escort vessels, trying to clear a path on the surface of Villani Prime. Colonel Minho received orders to evacuate all rescued civilians to the assault ships and prepare for immediate departure, but he had a different idea. "Major Yuna, how many Harvester ground installations are still active on this planet?" he asked. "At least 12 major sites, sir. They're still processing captured Villani and converting the planet's resources." "Then we're not leaving," Minho decided. "Staff Sergeant Do-Yun, gather all squad leaders. We're going to hit every Harvester installation on this planet simultaneously." "Sir, that's a suicide mission," Do-Yun protested. "We don't have enough people to attack 12 sites at once. We don't need to destroy them all. We just need to create enough chaos to disrupt their operations." If we can force them to divert resources to deal with us, it might give the fleet a better chance against that hive ship. The Marines began splitting into smaller teams, each assigned to attack a different harvester installation. They had no illusions about their chances of survival, but they had a job to do. Sergeant Jiho led his team toward a massive biomechanical structure that was converting Villani civilians into harvester units. The building pulsed with alien life, and tentacle-like cables connected it to similar structures across the planet. "Remember, we're not trying to survive this," he told his Marines. "We're trying to hurt them as much as possible before they kill." U.S. Corporal Inha carried every explosive she could find, planning to blow herself up inside the harvester facility if necessary. The other Marines had similar plans. They would fight until they ran out of ammunition, then use their weapons as clubs, then fight with their bare hands until the end. In space, the Thunderbolt was racing toward the hive ship at maximum speed. The massive alien vessel had begun firing its main weapons, beams of energy that could vaporize a normal ship in seconds. But Captain Jinho was not flying in a normal pattern. "Evasive maneuvers, random pattern," he ordered. "Don't let them predict where we're going next." Navigator Yunwoo threw the ship into a series of impossible turns and loops, pushing the engines and hull to their breaking points. The crew was thrown around by forces that would have killed most alien species, but humans could survive higher acceleration than almost anyone else in the galaxy. The hive ship's weapons missed by meters as the Thunderbolt danced through the deadly energy beams. Other human ships were not so lucky. The destroyer Courage exploded in a ball of fire, and the heavy cruiser Valiant lost her entire forward section to a direct hit, but the sacrifices were not in vain. Each ship that died cleared the way for the others, and Captain Sunmi's destroyers had managed to knock out several of the hive ship's defensive weapon clusters. 60 seconds to impact," announced Navigator Hyunwoo. "Hull temperature is critical, but we're still in one piece." Dr. Soman, who had stayed at her post in the medical bay despite the hopeless situation, made one final discovery. The harvester biotechnology samples she had been studying showed something interesting under extreme stress. "Captain," she called. Over the intercom, the harvester organisms break down when exposed to massive electromagnetic pulses. If you overload the reactor, the electromagnetic wave might do more damage than just the explosion. "Good to know," Genho replied. "Chief Borum, prepare to overload all systems on my command. I want the biggest electromagnetic pulse we can generate." The Thunderbolt punched through the hive ship's outer hull like a bullet through paper. The smaller vessel carved a path deep into the alien ship's interior, past chambers filled with captured beings from dozens of different species, past biomechanical factories that were building new harvester units. 30 seconds to reactor overload," reported Chief Engineer Borum. "All crew, prepare for final maneuvers." Captain Jin Ho looked at his crew one last time. These people had followed him into certain death without question. They represented the best of what humanity could be, brave, selfless, and absolutely determined to protect innocent life. "It's been an honor serving with you all," he said quietly. On the planet below, the Marine teams were fighting their final battles. Sergeant Jiho's team had made it inside the harvester conversion facility, but they were surrounded by dozens of alien defenders. The Marines fought with desperate fury, knowing that every second they delayed the conversion process was another small victory. Corporal Inha set off her explosives inside the facility's power core, destroying the building and herself in a massive fireball. Similar explosions erupted across the planet as other Marine teams carried out their suicide missions. Staff Sergeant Do-yun, wounded and running low on ammunition, made his last stand in the ruins of a Villani school. He was surrounded by harvester units, but he kept fighting until his weapon ran dry, then continued fighting with a piece of broken metal until they finally brought him down. Colonel Minho, leading the attack on the largest harvester installation, planted charges throughout the facility before the aliens could stop him. As the building exploded around him, he transmitted a final message to the fleet. "Mission accomplished. The planet is clear. Give them hell for us. In space, the Thunderbolt reached the heart of the hive ship. Captain Jinho could see the alien ship's central core, a massive organ that pulsed with malevolent life. This was the brain of the creature that had consumed 20 civilizations. Reactor overload in 5 seconds, announced Chief Engineer Borum. It's been a privilege, Captain. The privilege was mine, Jinho replied. For Earth, for the Villani, for everyone who can't fight back. The Thunderbolt's reactor exploded in a burst of light brighter than a star, sending electromagnetic waves racing through the hive ship's biomechanical systems. The alien organism screamed in frequencies that human ears could not hear as its nervous system was fried by energies it had never encountered before. The hive ship began to break apart, its massive bulk tearing itself apart as internal explosions cascaded through its structure. The smaller harvester vessels, suddenly cut off from their central command, began to behave erratically, but the cost had been terrible. Most of the human fleet was gone, and hundreds of brave Marines had died fighting on the planet's surface. The question now was whether their sacrifice had been enough to save the galaxy from the harvester threat. The explosion from the Thunderbolt's reactor lit up space like a new star. Captain Sunmi, commanding the surviving human ships from the damaged destroyer Reliant, watched in amazement as the massive hive ship began to tear itself apart. Chain reactions raced through its biomechanical structure, causing secondary explosions that sent chunks of alien metal spinning into the void. All harvester vessels are showing signs of system failure, reported her tactical officer. They're losing coordination. Some of them are attacking each other. The smaller harvester ships, suddenly cut off from the hive mind that had controlled them, began behaving like lost animals. Without central command, their adaptation systems could not function properly. They drifted aimlessly or fired randomly at anything that moved, including each other. Dr. Soman, who had transferred to one of the assault ships before the Thunderbolt's final run, monitored the electromagnetic readings from the explosion. The pulse from Captain Jinho's reactor disrupted their entire neural network. The biomechanical components are shutting down across the system. Within an hour, the last of the harvester ships had either been destroyed or fled into deep space. The immediate threat was over, but the cost had been enormous. Of the 11 ships that had entered the Villani system, only 3 remained operational. The 47th Marine Expeditionary Unit had been reduced from 800 Marines to fewer than 50 survivors. On the surface of Villani Prime, Elder Kesson emerged from the ruins of his world with the other rescued civilians. The planet was scarred and broken, but it was free. The harvester installations had been destroyed by the human Marines, and the alien conversion facilities lay in smoking ruins. "Your people saved us," he said to the human soldiers who had survived. "But it's such a terrible price. How do we repay a debt like this?" Master Sergeant Yuna, now the highest-ranking Marine survivor, looked at the elderly Villani with tired eyes. "You don't owe us anything. This is what humans do. We protect people who can't protect themselves." The news of the victory reached Earth 3 weeks later, carried by the fastest courier ship Captain Sunmi could spare. Admiral Sunmi read the battle reports in her office at Pacific Command, and for the first time in her long military career, she wept openly. The reports told the story of incredible heroism and sacrifice. Captain Jinho ramming his ship into the heart of the enemy hive. Colonel Minho and his Marines fighting impossible odds to save alien civilians. Hundreds of humans dying so that people they had never met could live, but the reports also contained intelligence that changed everything. The harvester technology recovered from the battlefield revealed the scope of the threat humanity had faced. These creatures had consumed entire civilizations across multiple galactic sectors. They had been preparing for a massive expansion that would have swept through populated space like a plague. The humans had not just saved the Villani colonies. They had saved the entire galaxy. Ambassador Kyung was summoned to an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from every member species filled the Great Chamber, their faces showing a mixture of awe, gratitude, and fear. The Humans had proven themselves to be exactly what the galaxy had whispered they might be. Dangerous beyond measure, the Thurian representative, who had questioned humanity's military capabilities just weeks earlier, stood to address the chamber. Honored delegates, we have received the complete battle reports from the Villani system. The human force, outnumbered 50 to 1, not only defeated an enemy that had consumed 20 civilizations, but they did so through tactics that defied all military logic. The Altarian delegate added, our own military analysts have studied the human battle recordings. Their willingness to sacrifice individual ships and personnel for tactical advantage is unlike anything we have ever seen. They fought as if death was preferable to defeat. Ambassador Kyung listened to the debates with mixed feelings. The other species were trying to understand what they had witnessed, but they could not grasp the fundamental truth about humanity. Humans did not fight because they enjoyed war or because they were naturally violent. They fought because they believed some things were worth dying for. Elder Kesson had been invited to address the council as a witness to the battle. The old Villani's crystal skin was still cracked from his ordeal, but his voice was strong as he spoke. Honored delegates, I have lived through something that no Villani has ever experienced before. I have seen war. I have watched my people die and my world burn. But I have also seen something else. Beings who would sacrifice everything to save strangers. He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. The humans did not come to our aid because they expected reward or because we could offer them something in return. They came because we asked for help, and that was enough. They fought not to conquer or to gain territory, but to preserve life itself, the Centauri representative spoke up. But surely you understand, Elder Kesson, that such violent tendencies make humans dangerous to all of us. How do we know they will not turn their weapons on peaceful species? Elder Kesson's response surprised everyone. Because I have seen their true nature. When the battle was over and the enemy was defeated, the human survivors did not celebrate their victory. They wept for their fallen comrades and worked to heal the wounded, including our people. These are not conquerors or destroyers. These are protectors. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when innocent lives were threatened. The question now was how to channel that capability in a way that served everyone's interests. The final resolution, passed by unanimous vote, established what became known as the Terran Protocol. Earth would serve as the rapid response force for existential threats to galactic civilization. When peaceful species faced enemies they could not handle alone, they would call for humanity's Killworlders. But the protocol came with strict conditions. Human forces would respond only to genuine threats against civilian populations. They would not intervene in political disputes or territorial conflicts. And most importantly, once a threat was eliminated, human forces would withdraw immediately. 6 months later, newly promoted Captain Sunmi stood on the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, the first ship built specifically for the Terran Protocol missions. Her crew was composed entirely of volunteers who understood that their job was to be the galaxy's last line of defense against threats that no one else could handle. The ship's communication officer looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Andromeda sector. Unknown attackers have hit 3 systems. The local defense forces are requesting immediate assistance. Captain Sunmi studied the tactical display showing the location of the attacks. It was 2 weeks away at maximum speed, through some of the most dangerous space lanes in the galaxy. Her crew would be flying into the unknown to face an enemy they knew nothing about, possibly to die for people they had never met. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's intercom. We have received a distress call from the Andromeda sector. Unknown hostiles are attacking civilian populations. We are the only force close enough to respond. She paused, thinking of Captain Jinho and all the others who had died at Villani Prime. Their sacrifice had not just saved one civilization, but had established humanity's role as the galaxy's protectors. This is what we signed up for, people. This is what it means to be human. When someone calls for help, we answer. When someone needs protection, we provide it. When the impossible must be done, we do it. The crew responded with quiet determination. They were the children of Earth, the Killworlders who had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had inherited a legacy of courage and sacrifice that stretched back through all of human history. "Set course for the Andromeda sector," Captain Sunny ordered. "Maximum speed. Someone out there needs our help, and we're not going to let them down." As the Vengeance jumped to faster-than-light travel, its crew prepared for another impossible mission. Somewhere in the galaxy, another species was learning what it meant when Earth sent its Killworlders to answer a call for help. The message was always the same. "We heard your distress call. Help is coming. The humans are on their way."